What is up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. I have missed you guys. If you guys are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Maddie. I am a nurse and I also do YouTube. I do a lot of lifestyle, fitness, beauty, and fashion videos. So if you're just stumbling along my channel, welcome. Thank you for watching. And if you guys would please, before we get started, hit the thumbs up button on this video, hit the subscribe button down below, and turn on your bell notifications so that you don't miss any future videos. I am home from Austria. I'm back in Colorado, and I'm finally getting around to filming this video for you guys. So I've been having a lot of people ask me when I'm going to post this video, and I'm sorry that it's taken so long. That was never my intention. When I started my YouTube channel originally, I was feeling like I wanted to share my story, but I wanted to do it at the right time so that it would be received well. And I don't usually get nervous to film videos, but I feel a little bit nervous about this one just because I want this video to be nothing more than a way to express what happened to me, and if it can help one person, then my job will be done here. But I do want to put a disclaimer out there that I know that everything that I went through, people go through what I went through or worse every single day, and have family members that have been through something like this. So I didn't want this video to come across as like a sob story. It's like literally the last thing I would want. I didn't want to film this and have people come back at me with comments saying, "You're alive, you look great, like you're fine, you don't have anything wrong with you, like why would you be so sad about something that happened?" And I think that was my own insecurity going into filming this video, which is why it's taken me this long. It's been, let's see, about 9 months since this happened to me. But here we are, and we're gonna do it. And thank you guys for your support, and almost every single subscriber that I have, you guys have had the sweetest comments, and I know you guys are interested in hearing about what happened. So without further ado, I love you guys, thank you for watching, and let's jump right in. Okay, so as another disclaimer, I just want to say that I know not every viewer I have on my channel is a nurse or a prospective nurse, so I'm going to try to keep things in layman's terms and not share anything too graphic. I know my nurses probably are interested in that, so maybe a little bit here and there, but I don't want anyone to feel like this is going to be a gross video or like oversharing too much information or anything like that. It's just going to kind of explain what happened, why it happened, and what has happened because of that. So let's see, it was March 18th of 2018, and I was with my boyfriend Ryan. I had worked a full week of work and I was feeling great. We were driving back home to his parents' house in Western Colorado, and I just didn't have an appetite. Like, this girl likes to eat, and I didn't want to eat anything. So that was kind of the first weird thing that happened. So I didn't want to eat anything, went to bed. The next morning we all got up and went skiing, and I started to feel super nauseous. My whole body was kind of aching in weird places, and at the time I was doing the keto diet. If you guys don't know what that is, it's essentially a diet where you cut almost all of your carbs out and you eat mostly only fats. So I'd started that diet on like Monday of that week, and this was now Saturday. So I was like, oh, maybe it's just the keto diet, maybe I just am feeling the effects of not having carbs in my diet. So I chalked it up to that. We were skiing. I was able to ski some, but my whole body started to hurt so bad that I went down to the lodge and I ordered a soda, and I was just like sipping on the soda, hoping that would make me feel better. Still couldn't eat anything. I'd even brought my meals with me. I couldn't eat a thing. And so I just kind of like laid low the rest of the day at the bottom of the ski resort, and then we went home later that day. I remember laying on the couch and I got chills so bad that my whole body was shaking. I went into Ryan's room and got in bed with, I think I had 2 shirts and a sweatshirt on, 2 pairs of sweats, fuzzy socks on my feet, and like 3 blankets and 2 quilts. So needless to say, I knew something was wrong, but I just wasn't sure what. Like, I kind of was starting to feel like not myself. I was shaking uncontrollably because I was so cold, and I knew that it wasn't just from skiing or from the keto diet at this point. The next morning I wake up and I have a 103 fever. Thankfully, Ryan's mom is a nurse practitioner, so she, let's see, that day, that was Sunday, she stayed with me most of the day, and they would just come in and check on me. But again, I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink anything, I was miserable laying in bed. I just felt worthless, and my whole body was just hurting, so I couldn't really get up by myself. I just knew, like, this is something serious, but hopefully it'll just go away. I've had the flu before, and I was like, you know what, this kind of feels like the flu, it's probably just the flu. So the next day rolls around, Monday, and Ryan's mom goes to work, and later that day she brought home a flu test. I still had a 103 fever. It would kind of go fluctuate between 103, 102, high 103s, and the whole day. So Ryan stayed with me, tried to get me to drink Gatorade, eat something, still couldn't. And at this point I started to have like an excruciating headache. I've never had migraines before, but if I had to assume what a migraine felt like, this would have been it. And so Debbie Ann comes home, she brings me a flu test, she tests me for the flu, I don't have the flu. So our nurse brains are all just spinning, thinking, what could this possibly be? And it's very possible that it was a strain of the flu that we just don't have the ability to test for, because there's thousands of strains of the flu virus. Okay, so then after that, I feel like I just kind of progressively kept getting worse and worse. So I think it was that night that we decided to go into the ER. So by this point, I was obviously still horizontal in the bed, could not move anything. Like, I couldn't look at light, I couldn't look at my phone, I couldn't listen to music, I couldn't watch TV. All I could do was lay there because everything hurt and everything was aching and my head was throbbing, I felt nauseous. I never threw up though, well, I threw up in the hospital, but I never threw up like in this beginning process. But I also wasn't eating anything. So Ryan picked me up and carried me into his truck, put me in the front seat. I remember I was wrapped in blankets because I was still freezing. I would literally ask Ryan to like put his hands on me. Oh God, here we go. I would ask Ryan to push down on my body as hard as he could so that I would stop shaking, because like shaking uncontrollably, and I couldn't control how much I was shaking, and it would hurt everything in my body. So I was like, can you just push on me so that I'm not shaking anymore? So poor thing, he was like driving to the ER and like pushing on my body so that, oh, I just spilled my coffee, pushing on my body so that I wouldn't be hurting as much. So we get to the ER, Ryan runs in and gets a wheelchair and puts me in it, wheels me in, and that's kind of where it all began. So we were at this really small hospital where my boyfriend grew up, and it's only an 11-bed hospital. So needless to say, they have a really small ER, no ICU, not really any critical care whatsoever. So, but at this point we didn't really know what it was. So we go to the ER because that was really my only option, and they give me an IV, hook me up to fluids. And I think they gave me, the first time I think they gave me like 2 liters of fluids before they sent me home. They tested me for the flu again. They tested me for meningitis, so they actually did a spinal tap in my spinal column to get some CSF to test for meningitis because my headache was so bad, and a high fever, because those are kind of 2 warning signs for that. And then, let's see, what else did they do that time around? I think they did a chest x-ray, and yeah, I want to say that's all that time. So they couldn't figure out what it was. They decided to send me home. My fever had come down slightly, and they thought I was okay enough to kind of go on. I did feel a lot better after getting fluids. I remember kind of coming alive again a little bit. Went back to Ryan's parents' house that night, and I remember eating a few bites of soup. I remember still being cold and going to bed. Didn't sleep much that night, just tossing and turning. getting chills again, woke up the next morning, so this is now either Tuesday or Wednesday, with a 104 fever. So I'm sitting there laying in bed, and Debbie Ann had gone to work already, and I was just, once again, so miserable. At this point, also, I had developed excruciating stomach pain. So not only did I have the headache, the chills, the fever, body aches, all of that come back, I also had this excruciating stomach pain. Now, being a nurse, I went through my checklist in my head, like quadrants of my abdomen, what could this be? I knew it wasn't appendicitis because it didn't feel like stabbing pain, but it was, and it wasn't in my right lower quadrant, but it was kind of, my entire stomach felt like it was in one huge cramp, and it was miserable. So I think it was about 10 o'clock in the morning, the ER doctor that I had seen the night before called me, and he said, "Hey Madison, we really would like for you to come back in. I would like to do a CT scan because it's really strange that we can't figure out what's wrong with you." So luckily he had called, but I was already calling Ryan from the other room saying, "I think I need to go back to the ER," before he'd even called me, because my fever had gone up once again, and now it was at 104, which is a number that I hadn't seen yet. So long story short, go back to the ER, same routine, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything, couldn't function. I remember Ryan rolling me into the ER, and I was in so much pain and agony that he pushed me right through the ER double doors and said, "You need to get her a room right now." And they were like, sir, like, you have to wait, you have to check in. And he was like, "No, you guys sent her home last night and she's even worse today. I'm bringing her back here." So he just rolled me back there, and I just remember feeling like I was gonna die in those moments. Like, I genuinely, that's the only way I can describe it. I get on the bed, back in the ER, back in my same room as the day before, and they start my IV again, get me hooked up to fluids. I was so in pain at this point that I was worried about going to get the CT scan because I didn't want to sit there and have it, like, I couldn't even lay flat. So the thought of going into the CT machine, they wanted to do a CT of my head and my abdomen. So I don't really quite remember the whole timeline of things at this point. I think I remember them doing another chest x-ray, and at this point my blood pressure was extremely low and my heart rate was in like the 130s. So obviously, as a nurse, my boyfriend's sister was there also, who actually works at this hospital in the operating room, and she is a nurse, and I think all of us were kind of thinking at this point, shock. She's going into shock. And the super high fever, my heart rate was through the roof, the blood pressure was tanking, and that was even with me getting fluids. So at this point, Emmy, Ryan's sister, was on the phone with my parents, and we were kind of thinking like, okay, you probably should come up here because this is getting serious. So I remember the hospitalist and the ER doctors all kind of working together to try to figure out what the heck was wrong with me. At this point is when they started me on a bunch of different antibiotics, and this was really like one of the days that I remember the most, just because I was in so much pain. I didn't know what was going on, and I just wanted so badly to know what was wrong with me. Fast forward to a couple hours later, they decided to admit me into the hospital. That is when my parents left from Utah to drive up to see me, and they got there that night around 11 at night. And I remember that night they admitted me to the floor, so I was on the floor. I remember getting onto the floor and thinking, this is not gonna be good, because their floor nurses, in their defense, are not trained for critically ill patients. But they had my vital machine going off every 4 hours. In the ER, it was going off every 20 minutes, I think. So I remember just continually asking them, can you please have my vitals go off more often? I don't feel right. I know something is wrong. I know we don't know what it is, but I can't, like, I'm a nurse. Listen to me. Like, I can't express to you enough that you need to take my vitals more than every 4 hours. You need to take them every 30 minutes. And so anyways, once my parents got there, I was very comforting. The next morning I woke up, I was eating a little bit, things kind of weirdly were looking better. There was a change in shift with the hospitalist. So the first hospitalist came in and said, okay, Maddie, like, you're looking so much better. Your fever's down. Your vitals have kind of stabilized. We want to get you try to get you off of your IV meds today and see if you can go home. Fast forward 2 hours and hospitalist switched. The new hospitalist came in. I remember him coming in to see me, and he sat down by my bedside and was just very in-depth and wanted to kind of look at all of our options, because at this point I kind of started to feel really shitty again. So he took another chest x-ray. Within 10 minutes he came in and said that I had atypical pneumonia. So I'll put a picture of what that looks like on the screen here, but it looks like your lung cavity is filled with like this cotton candy like substance. So needless to say, when he said that, my heart sunk into my stomach because I knew what that meant, and I knew it was going to be like somewhat of a rocky road from there. So he basically, within that amount of time between telling me that I had atypical pneumonia and about an hour later, I was starting to feel like I couldn't breathe, like I was drowning in my chest. It all seemed to happen very quickly, from feeling better to feeling 100% worse. Like, up to this point I had felt horrible, but I was still able to breathe. And after this happened and we discovered I had pneumonia, from that point on until fast forward 2 weeks, like, I could not breathe. Couldn't take a normal breath, felt like I was drowning, and that's when things really started to get bad. So the hospitalist came in and said, looked me in the eyes and said, okay, Maddie, we don't have the capacity to treat you here. We need to get you out. We have to transport you to a bigger facility that has the ability to essentially heal you and continue on with your care. So at this point, my parents, Ryan's whole family was there, and I just remember looking at him and, oh, sorry guys, saying to myself, like, okay, Maddie, this is the time. Like, you just have to surrender yourself to their care, and more than anything, surrender yourself to God. I was a Christian before this happened to me, but after, I mean, I don't think anything other than a situation like this can make you lean on your faith more, other than a loved one being in a situation like this, or being very ill, or in the ICU, or passing away. There's obviously a lot of reasons you can fall back on your faith, but I felt like in these moments when he told me I had to be intubated and life flighted to Denver, was probably the most testing of my faith moment in my entire life. So I just remember saying, okay, God, like, I'm in your hands now. There's nothing I can do. Like, I couldn't fight it because I couldn't breathe, so I couldn't say no. I couldn't say like, no, I need this much more time, because it was getting so serious that I needed a breathing machine. Like, I needed help breathing at this point. So I just remember saying, oh gosh, sorry guys. I remember saying bye to everybody. I remember I knew this was gonna be the hardest part to get through, because this is like the last time that I really, like, this is like the last day I really remember of a lot of this. So I remember saying bye to my family and bye to Ryan's family, and Ryan was last. And I just remember him crying and crying and crying. I was obviously sobbing, but and then Ryan's sister came in because she was gonna stay with me throughout the intubation. She's an OR nurse also, so she helps intubate people all day long, just like I do at work. So I knew if I had her next to me that things would at least be okay. still feels so fresh. It's so crazy, and it was 9 months ago. Okay, so from that point, I grabbed Emmy's hand and I just said, Emmy, like, keep me safe. I love you, like, thank you. So they all left the room. I remember a swarm of like 15 to 20 people being in my room when I was going to be intubated, which I think freaked me out more than anything, just because at work we intubate people with 2 people in the room, a nurse and an anesthetist. So a nurse anesthetist or an anesthesiologist. So it freaked me out. The flight crew, the air flight crew was in there. I remember there being like 3 flight nurses, the ER doctor, the hospitalist, a few RTs, Emmy, 6 other nurses, or I don't even know. So I just remember there being so many people in my room that I was so overwhelmed that I just like looked at Emmy and she was like, you're gonna be okay, I promise. And I just like closed my eyes. And the rest I don't really remember. It's all been filled in with back data from Emmy of that experience. I will just give you a little rundown, and this is not to bash anyone. This is just to kind of shed light on the reality of healthcare sometimes. There were way too many people in my room, first of all, and all I know is what Emmy has told me. So, like I said, this is not to put anyone under the bus or anything, and I'm not going to give specifics, but one doctor tried to intubate me 2 times and with a normal CMAC blade and failed both times. And then they called in another doctor. He also failed 2 or 3 times to intubate me. An intubation is when you put a breathing tube down in your throat so that you can breathe. It closes off the space to your lungs and the machine then breathes for you. So you're not using your own lung capabilities anymore. The tube is breathing for you. So that's what intubation is. So needless to say, there were 4 failed attempts, and finally Emmy, my O2 saturation was very, very, very low. She said I was starting to turn blue, and she said, enough is enough. You guys are gonna stop right now. You're gonna bag her, which essentially is you put the mask on my face and bag me with oxygen, so breathe for me manually. You're gonna bag her, and I'm calling my anesthesiologist up here, and he's the only one that's gonna touch her from this point on. And thank God for Emmy, seriously, because I think that was a reality check for everyone in that room, that this wasn't just like a cool learning experience for their hospital. I'm a human being, and I was sitting there fighting for my life on the bed, and there's more I could go into, but essentially, thank God Emmy was there to kind of give these people a reality check, because at the end of the day, we're all healthcare practitioners. We all, of course, we want to learn and experience things and grow in our practice. But there were many instances during my intubation that did not go smoothly, and thankfully I'm here to tell about it, so I can't be too upset because I made it through. So then from that point, they put me on the airplane. I was flying on a fixed wing airplane that night because there was supposed to be some bad weather. So my dad before this had decided that he was gonna fly with me. So for this whole next strand of, like, for the next few hours, my memory goes in and out. They'd given me a drug called ketamine to intubate me, which is, in my opinion, not the best drug to use. We mostly use propofol, but they gave me ketamine. I'm not really sure why. It's a very old drug, but you can have some like out-of-body experiences with it. So I was completely paralyzed. I didn't feel pain. I couldn't move, and I was sleepy, but my brain felt awake. So I remember them rolling me on to the ambulance. I remember my dad's voice. I remember he was right with me, which was very comforting. I remember getting to the airplane, and they were loading me up onto the airplane. I don't remember feeling any of the motions of the airplane or anything. That's why they give you a paralytic, so that you don't feel any of that. However, I do remember my dad's voice. I remember my flight nurse's voice. She would lean down next to me and just let me know what was going on. And I remember my dad asking her, do you think she can hear you? Like, is she able to hear you? And the flight nurse said, I don't know if she can, but I speak to all my patients as if they can hear me. And I was like, I just remember like feeling so comforted after that, because I work with patients all day long that are sedated under anesthesia, asleep to the normal eye. But since my experience after this, I do talk to all my patients as if they can hear me, no matter if they can or can't. Because that, I could hear her, and that made me feel so much better, knowing that they were telling me where I was going, so I had some sort of orientation in all of this craziness. So from this point on, I remember arriving at the University of Colorado Hospital in Denver. I still couldn't open my eyes. I remember trying so hard to like open my eyes and tell someone that I was in there, but I couldn't. So that was like a really hard few moments for me. It could have just been the ketamine, where I was kind of having this like weird out-of-body experience. I do remember at one point kind of looking down on myself and seeing like the commotion of the room. I remember there being 2 male nurses, or a nurse and a tech, and they were trying to get my art line in, and all of it is kind of dissociative, and I realized that. But from that point on, I was pretty much down and out for the next 8 or 9 days. So sedated and intubated. The next day I woke up, and this is all from my family, so I don't know all of this stuff flat out yet. So this is all from my family. So they extubated me the next day after being life flighted. They kept me intubated through the night, and then they decided to try to extubate me. They extubated me, and I will put that video in here if you guys want to see it. If you don't want to see it, skip forward a little bit.
Big cough, big cough. Okay. Good job, Maddie. Good job.
Yeah, Mads.
I like to tell you this is going to be better, but I'm trying to get back.
Strong, man.
Doing great, man. You're doing great. I know. Okay. I know it's uncomfortable, man. Just don't let that go into your lungs. I'll pull that tube, okay? Yes. Drop that cuff so you can feel it in your throat. Okay, it's not gonna make you cough. There you go. All right? Good. Good job.
Yeah, girl.
But yeah, so what you guys just saw was them, the RT Bob, taking out my breathing tube. After this happened, they put me on this super high flow oxygen. I'll put a picture of that on the screen here with my cute little sister. At this point, Kenzie was flying home from New Zealand. She was actually studying abroad in New Zealand, and she got there just in time for me to be, like, I was already extubated, and she got there and I was like, climb in bed with me. So at this point I could talk, and I remember very few pieces of this. I went the whole night with this high flow oxygen on, and I just remember hating it. It was like feeling like a blow dryer was blowing air up into your nose and all through your body. So I was puffed full of air. I was so swollen. I'll put another picture here. Super swollen. And side note, this entire time, guys, they still could not figure out what was wrong with me. So my entire stay, they still never found out what was wrong. At this point, I had developed what was called acute respiratory distress syndrome. So my body was pulling fluid into the cavity surrounding my lungs and compressing my lungs. So I literally could not breathe at all. My lungs were drowning in my body, essentially. So needless to say, the next day they had to put the breathing tube back in. I think that was the most challenging for my family and Ryan because they were experiencing all of that. I was very, very, very sedated through all of this. Within the next couple days, they also did a procedure where they drew about 2 Coke cans full of fluid off of my right lung with a big syringe and needle, pulled that off, and I remember after that definitely feeling better. Through this part, I remember some of my nurses. I remember one of my nurses, Kathy, was so amazing. So from that point on, I was pretty much intubated for another 7 days after they intubated me the second time. So the ARDS had taken over my body, and I think at this point, one of the worst parts for me was not even like feeling the tube in my throat or any of that. It was not being able to communicate with my family. So I had little notepads where I would write out things to them, and I actually have some of my notes that I can read you guys, but I was like, well, I can't talk to them. Like, why can't I, I just felt like I couldn't express myself. So I would write on pieces of paper to my nurses and to my doctors and to my family and Ryan. So at least I was able to do that. But I think one of the parts that taught me the most from this experience was being a patient that was incontinent. So I had no control over my body functions. Kind of gross, but it's true. And I couldn't move on my own. Someone had to move me. I couldn't talk to my family or friends, and I was confined to my bed. And I was so reliant on my nurses and doctors and family and Ryan that I have such a deeper appreciation for being on the patient side of things. I've done the nursing side, and my ICU nurses were incredible. They seriously were so amazing. I couldn't have asked for anything better. Anyways, guys, after about 7 days, to kind of wrap this up, I was able to be extubated. Best day of my life. And from there, I progressively got so much better. In like 2 or 3 days, I was discharged from the hospital, right from the ICU. I never even went to the floor. And in the next month, I had to just work on gaining my strength back. The only residual things that I really had were I lost 17 pounds. All of my body muscle that I'd worked so hard to get was gone. And I lost a bunch of hair from being on tube feedings and a ton of antibiotics and a bunch of different things. Yeah, I worked that next month and a half so hard to gain back my strength and my fitness routine, build back the strength into my lungs. I used an incentive spirometer a bunch. That thing was my best friend, even though I hated it. And I was able to get back to full function. And I know that I'm so lucky for that. Kenzie told me once, my sister, that I looked over at her and I said, I think it was when I had the high flow oxygen, and I said, it's okay, Kenz, I'll be okay, God is with me. And there were a couple other times where my family and like friends of mine came to visit, and I would just write on my sheet of paper, like, please just pray for me. And I remember certain moments just feeling overcome with faith in God that He was going to get me through. And if it was my time, that I trusted in Him regardless. Because in those moments when you're sedated and laying there and there's nothing you can do about it, that is when your faith is truly tested. And I remember writing to Ryan, why is this happening to me? You know, why me? Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to go on. And him just telling me, like, Maddie, you're the strongest person I know. If anyone can get through this, it's you, and that is why you're in this situation. But I'm here, I'm alive, I'm well, and I'm so lucky. From this experience, my sister decided to become a nurse, and I think I'm gonna do a little segment on that whole portion at another time, because that's just another story in itself. But my sister decided to become a nurse after this experience. Ryan and I's bond was strengthened tenfold throughout this experience, and same with my family. I mean, we were close before, but after this, something like this happens, it really just kind of opens your mind to a whole other world that you don't necessarily see before something like this happens. You start to overlook some of the smaller things that happen in life and realize that life can be taken from you at any moment, and we're so lucky to live this life that God created for us, and I am just so thankful that my experience turned out the way that it did. No, they never found out what was wrong with me, and it took me a while to be okay with that. But the doctors, nurses, and staff at the University of Colorado Hospital saved my life, along with the breathing machines, and I'm here to tell about it. So if you are a nurse, a prospective nurse, keep pushing, you guys. Saving patients' lives is something that I can't even really express. From my experience as a patient, I still don't know to this day how I can ever thank them for everything that they did for me and my family. And if you're not in healthcare at all and you do come across nurses or doctors in your life, which I hope you don't, but if you do, just show your appreciation, because what they do is beyond words. Anyways, you guys, that is going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you guys have more questions, please leave them down below. I would be happy to answer them. I didn't want to just drag this on, so I know there's probably some things that I missed in this story. So if you want to know more details, please let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching and for your support. I love you all so much. I'm so lucky to have such amazing subscribers that watch my videos. You guys make my day every single day with your comments. So thank you so much. I love you guys. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you would like to see more. And I'll see you guys back for the next one. Bye.